A variable is an identifier, a name, to which a value can be assigned. Look at this, x equals 10. Here 10 is an integer or whole number value. X is a variable. The equal sign is the assignment operator. So here I assign the value 10 to the variable x. I'm Hugh, and this is another lesson in my complete programming course. Remember from the last lesson I said that pieces of data in programming have data types. In many programming languages, before you can assign a value to a variable, you have to declare that variable as being capable of holding a value of a specific type. In C, C#, and in Java, an integer variable has the type int, and it's declared like this. First I write the data type, int, then the variable name, x. I add a semicolon at the end to show that this is the end of the declaration. The semicolon is a required bit of syntax in C, C#, Java, and many other programming languages. Having declared an int variable, I can now assign integers to it, like this, x equals 10. But I can't assign other data types. A floating point number is an error. In Visual Studio, errors are marked with a squiggly red line. Assigning a string to an integer variable is also an error. X equals hello world, that won't work. And that's true even if the string looks like an integer. However, once I've assigned one integer, I can assign a different integer to the same variable. Or I can even calculate an integer value and assign that. So here, x holds the value 125, which is a result of the addition. In many programming languages, the type of a variable is fixed. If it's declared to be an integer, an int, it can hold integer values and nothing else. If it's declared to be a string, it can only hold string values. But as long as the data type is correct, the actual value of a variable, well, that can vary during the execution of the program, which is why it's called a variable. It's worth mentioning that there are some programming languages that don't require that you declare the types of variables before you use them. A language such as Ruby, for example, tries to work out the data types of each variable according to what type of data you actually assign to each variable. In fact, Ruby also lets you assign different data types to the same variable. In many languages, that is not allowed, and it's not something that we'll be doing in this course. In C# and Java, and in most other compiled languages, we do need to declare variables before we use them, and each variable must have a specific data type. Well, there are some special exceptions to that rule, but for now we'll assume that all variables must be declared with a specific data type. In C# and Java, we do this by writing the name of the data type, such as int, followed by the variable name that we can choose. Here I have an int variable called myIncome. Here I have a string variable called myFriendlyGreeting. At first, it might seem a lot of work to have to declare variables and their data types before using them, but there's a good reason for doing that. The compiler in C#, Java, and other languages will check that you don't try to assign the wrong types of data to your variables. Data of the incorrect data type could cause your program, well, to produce incorrect results or even to crash. By the way, when you create variables, try to give them meaningful names. If you're calculating a total and displaying an error message, your code will be easier to understand if you have used variables called total and error message rather than if you call them something like x and y. The rules for naming variables are different in different languages. Usually it's okay to use alphabetic characters and underscores, and sometimes numbers, as long as they're not at the very start of the variable name. But avoid characters such as plus and minus, which have special meanings in programming. Now, we've used strings quite a bit in this lesson, and I said that strings are made up of characters strung together. So what's the difference between a single character and a string that contains a single character? Well, there's quite a lot, as a matter of fact, and I'll explain that in the next lesson. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to the Code With You channel and click the bell to get an email whenever I upload new lessons.